You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Hey everybody, Dave here. Have you ever wondered where your personal information is lurking online? Like many of you, I was concerned about my data being sold by data brokers. So I decided to try Delete Me. I have to say, Delete Me is a game changer. Within days of signing up, they started removing my personal information from hundreds of data brokers. I finally have peace of mind knowing my data privacy is protected. Delete Me's team does all the work for you with detailed reports, so you know exactly what's been done. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and use promo code N2K at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and enter code N2K at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/N2K, code N2K. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Research Saturday. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is our weekly conversation with researchers and analysts tracking down the threats and vulnerabilities, solving some of the hard problems, and protecting ourselves in a rapidly evolving cyberspace. Thanks for joining us.
So one of the researchers on the team was interested in how applications used entitlements on macOS and started looking at them and found out that there were some vulnerabilities in the Microsoft applications.
That's Yves Younan, Senior Manager with Talos Vulnerability Discovery and Research at Cisco. The research we're discussing today is titled How Multiple Vulnerabilities in Microsoft Apps for macOS Pave the Way to Stealing Permissions. Well, it seems to me like this is kind of a story in two parts here. I mean, we've got the foundational part, which is how macOS deals with several layers of security, and then the specifics of the Microsoft vulnerabilities that you all looked into here. Can we start with the macOS side of things? Can you take us through the specific ways that macOS handles these layers of security? It's kind of unique.
Yes, it is. So traditionally, in a regular operating system or in a traditional operating system permission environment, what you have is you have user permissions, and when that you have that permission of that user, you can do whatever that user can do. So macOS has added, and iPhone does this as well, has added extra permissions to access sensitive resources or do certain sensitive tasks. And they do this by enforcing a permission level on applications itself rather than on the user. So when I run an application that wants to access my microphone, that application has to have, first of all, declared an entitlement that it wants to access that microphone. And then the user has to give it explicit permission to do that once the application runs.
And additionally, there's some sandboxing that goes on as well?
Yeah. So if you download an app from the App Store, it is sandboxed in preventing it from doing certain actions on your system. If you download it from somewhere else, it is not necessarily sandboxed. But if it's notarized by Apple, it does have to have hardened runtime enabled. And hardened runtime makes sure that the application is less susceptible to attacks from other applications.
And so given these standards within how macOS handles this, what does that mean to the end user themselves, but then also what does it mean for the developer?
So the developer has to declare the entitlements that they want. If they go through the App Store, that goes through Apple's process. and it is sandboxed. If they don't go through the App Store but don't want to be listed as an unverified developer, so if they want to be notarized by Apple, they have to, again, declare the entitlements they want and enable hardened runtimes. So that's for the developer side. So you have to declare these entitlements, because if you don't, you can't even ask for permission. So, for example, you can't even ask for permission to access the microphone if you don't have that entitlement in your application. For users, it means that when you start an application, it will often say, "Oh, I need access to the microphone. Are you willing to grant that?" And if you say yes, that is stored within the operating system, so it doesn't ask you every time, in what's called the TCC database.
Well, there's another aspect of this that you all point out, and that's library injection. Can you go through and describe to us what that means?
So library injection is an entitlement that you can, well, if you enable a hardened runtime in an application, you cannot inject libraries into that application. That means you cannot load code that is not signed by the application developer or by Apple. There is an entitlement called disable library verification, which enables the application to load unsigned code into its address space.
And so what are the implications of that?
So usually an application would do that if they need to load plugins or something. But in this case, an attacker could also abuse it by loading foreign code into that application and then reusing the permissions that it has. So, for example, as I mentioned a couple of times, microphone access. So if a user has granted that to a specific application, if you load code into that application, you can reuse that permission.
We'll be right back. Calling all InfoSec professionals. Are you dreading the annual scramble to create engaging content for Cybersecurity Awareness Month this October? KnowBe4 has your back with their brand new 2024 Resource Kit, featuring their own award-winning streaming quality show, The Inside Man. This comprehensive kit is a goldmine of free resources designed to both captivate and educate your users. Your users will enjoy free access to the heart-pounding first season of The Inside Man, and for the first time, engage in the Inside Man New Recruits game, where your users become cyber analysts hunting down a malicious insider threat. But there's more. You get access to a resource user guide packed with ideas and messaging, a weekly planner to help you roll out your campaign effortlessly, plus enough supporting training modules and assets to fill a whole month. Cover critical topics including AI and deepfakes, mobile device security, and incident response, all with the free kit. With KnowBe4's kit, say goodbye to outdated, unengaging content. It's all there, ready to go. Learn more at knowbe4.com/cybersecurity-kit. When it comes to ensuring your company has top-notch security practices, things can get complicated fast. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more, saving you time and money. With Vanta, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing Trust Center. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Our listeners can claim a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber for $1,000 off Vanta. Well, let's dig into the Microsoft apps themselves. Take us through what you found here.
So we looked at 8 applications for Microsoft. So the typical Office applications, Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and so on. We also looked at the Teams application. And so essentially all of them had that hardened runtime enabled, but also had the disable library verification entitlement also enabled. So that meant that we could we could load foreign code into those applications and thus could reuse the permissions that those applications had. So, for example, in the Teams application, it would request access to the microphone and the camera, and because of the way that it loaded libraries, we were able to then inject our own code into the application space and reuse those without specifically asking for those entitlements in our own application.
Now, you all reached out to Microsoft, and they said that they didn't think that this was a problem, that they felt like they needed this functionality for plugins?
So they patched 4 out of the 8 applications. So they patched 3 issues in Teams and in OneNote. The other 4 applications, so Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and Outlook, they said that it was required for plugins to work. And they considered it low risk.
Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, there is. So you do have to be able to, as an attacker, run code on the device. But so there is an aspect of having that, of getting to that action. But it bypasses the entire security model in the sense that these permissions that you have on macOS restrict what applications can do. And so I wouldn't consider it low risk. I would go with medium risk.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I guess given the ubiquity of Microsoft apps on people's computers here, I mean, that's a pretty wide, pretty broad potential attack path for folks.
Yes.
What are your recommendations then for folks to best protect themselves here?
So essentially, be careful with what you download. In the sense that since you cannot be 100% sure that you can rely on the protections that the operating system is offering, so be careful with what you download. Unverified applications, so that have not gone through the notarization process or that weren't downloaded from the App Store, you should think twice before simply executing them. Doesn't necessarily mean they're malicious, but do that extra verification.
So just so I understand it, I'm clear here, is a possible scenario that, let's say I have a Microsoft suite of applications installed on my macOS computer, and I install some other third-party app that is malicious. That third-party app could check to see if I have the Microsoft suite installed and then take advantage of this potential vulnerability?
Yes. So that app could then say, use the privileges that you've given to those Microsoft applications, camera, microphone, and just reuse them without the user being prompted that application wants those permissions. Even worse is if that application then requests those permissions, it would come from that application. So let's say PowerPoint does not have microphone access because you've never used a microphone with PowerPoint. If at that point you do try to access it, to the user it would look like PowerPoint is asking for those permissions.
Our thanks to Yves Younan from Talos Vulnerability Discovery and Research at Cisco for joining us. The research is titled How Multiple Vulnerabilities in Microsoft Apps for macOS Pave the Way to Stealing Permissions. We'll have a link in the show notes. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your team smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karp. Simone Petrella is our president. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. And I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next time.